Hi guys, I'm reading chapter 12 from A Night Divided today. It begins with a quote, "Do not rejoice in luck, do not hesitate in the storm." Fritz and I agreed we shouldn't tell Mama about Herr Krause's arrest and the trouble I'd nearly gotten into. She seemed happier lately. Neither of us wanted to ruin it for her. "We're in a routine again," Mama said at dinner. "This is good." But the routine was starting to wear on me, and something about reading the stamped message from Mr. Krause made me want to see my father again. It seemed like something Papa would have said if he were here. The next morning, I looked for him as I approached the crowded platform. It was a Saturday, only a half a day of school for us, but my least favorite day to walk there because of the Western tourists who often came to the wall on the weekends. They took pictures, brought their binoculars, and stared into our world as if we either needed or wanted their pity. I hated that they watched helplessly, but did nothing for us. Then I stopped, as if I had just seen myself in a mirror for the very first time. Who was I to complain about them? Wasn't I guilty of the same thing? Of staring helplessly and doing nothing about my own problems? The tourists couldn't do anything for me. Not even the powerful governments of the West could break through what they called the Iron Curtain. And everyone inside East Germany, with any sort of influence, stood shoulder to shoulder with Russia. No, there was only one person who could change my situation. Me. A couple of Grenzers were patrolling the wall this morning, but I didn't have their attention yet, nor did I care. I knew down to my toes that my father would be on the platform, and I wanted to see him. I didn't at first, but then as I kept walking forward, Dominic pushed to the front of the crowd and pointed to me. He gave a whoop I thought I could hear from where I stood, then called down. Almost instantly, my father was on the platform too. He started his dance with the digging, but the platform was far too crowded. And he didn't need to do it. I understand what he wanted, just not where. So I counted out 3 long and deliberate paces. Then with only a peek his way, I knelt on the ground and drew a small X. X marked the spot. My father nodded back at me, and I hoped he understood what I wanted to know. The problem was that even if he did, how could he possibly communicate to me something as complicated as where I should be digging or what sort of treasure I might be looking for? It had been risky enough for me to draw the X. And though I quickly brushed it out of my foot afterwards, I still drew the attention of a couple of guards in the tower who shouted down for me to walk on. I quickly obeyed and hurried away with my heart pounding. But it wasn't from fear, it was excitement for what my father might do next. Only a few days later, I found out. On most school days, our teacher allowed us some time in the early afternoon to quietly study with one another, and since it was near the end of the school year, there was some important tests coming up, and so she gave us more study time than usual. Although Anna had successfully avoided being anywhere near me for a few weeks, this time the teacher assigned her to join my group. The only spare seat was right next to me. I glanced sideways at her, but she did a good job of pretending not to notice. "Anna," I whispered, "can we talk?" She answered by raising the book in front of her face so that no one, especially me, could see her. A sour-faced boy across from us snorted. Since when did she become too good for the rest of us? I kicked him in the shins, hard. When he started to complain, I slouched like I was preparing to kick him again, and I would have, if necessary. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Anna lower her book a little bit, and I was pretty sure I caught the barest hint of a smile. Nearing the end of the group time, we were discussing the causes of America's Great Depression when Anna silently slipped a folded paper into my hand. All school kids know how to secretly pass notes, but this one surprised me. I wanted to thank her. No, I wanted to grab her shoulders and pull her into the tightest hug ever, but I didn't do that either. Instead, I slipped the note between the pages of my folder and began counting the minutes until school ended. Once we were dismissed, I quickly found a quiet spot under a tree, and only then did I dare unfold the paper. At first, what I saw made no sense. It was just a pencil drawing of an old building, square and made entirely of brick. There were 2 long windows in the front, but with no glass in them except for jagged pieces in the corners. An old chimney ran up the side of the building, but the bricks were shaded darker, suggesting it was an addition to the original space. There were 3 ground-level window openings too, but no doors, so I might have been looking at the back of the building. That frustrated me. As hard as it would have been to find any building in East Berlin, it would be nearly impossible to see the backs of them without wandering from yard to yard. Anna couldn't draw a circle, much less a building, so I knew this hadn't come from her. But there was no letter, no artist's signature, no explanation of why I should have received it. Anna walked past me a minute later. I stuffed the picture into my folder and then caught up to her. "Nothing's changed," she said. "Please go away." I will in a minute. Just tell me about the picture." "I don't know anything about it." but she had to know something. So I touched her arm and said, "Please, Anna, then I'll leave." She stopped, and I saw tears in her eyes. She looked around us, and then, in a voice so low I barely heard it, she said, "We have family in West Berlin. Someone told them about Peter's death, and they sent us a letter of consolation. This picture was in that letter with your first name on it, but I don't know why or where it came from." It was from my father, I was sure of that, and while I was less certain, I thought Dominic might have done the drawing. He used to be artistic, though I had no way of knowing if he still was. I started to tell her, but she shook her head to cut me off and said, "Don't say anything else, please. You don't want me to know why you got that." "I don't even know." She started to leave, but I added, "Anna, I want us to be friends." I thought I saw her soften just for a minute. Then her face became stone again until I barely recognized her as the girl I had once known so well. I hid the picture before my parents saw it, but you and I both know it means something. I can't do any more favors for you, Gerda. Next time, I will tell someone. I backed away to let her leave. If suddenly she pulled a mask from her face revealing a Stasi officer in disguise, I wouldn't have been any more surprised than I already was. Because that's who it felt like I was talking to. And who was I? And who knew? Maybe I was. I looked at the drawing one more time before setting off from home. Well, not directly home. Somewhere in East Berlin, this building was waiting for me. I needed to find it, and that's where I would dig.